All right, here's what's got me cranked up this week. Watching the Supreme Court nominee hearings this week, watching them nitpick little things. You know, you found this particular person, who was an activist judge. You admire him. Well, no, I admire his thinking. I admire his scholarship. I wouldn't judge the way he does, but I admire him. Well, but he's radical in what he does. They weren't listening to her answers. It was just a matter of getting things out there. And over the last few months, a phrase has come up: American exceptionalism. The idea that Americans are better than everybody else, that we're exceptional. They took the president to task because when they asked him, do you think Americans are exceptional? He says, of course I do. He says, and I'm pretty sure the British think that the British are exceptional and the Germans think the Germans are exceptional. He's right. It'd be silly if they didn't. I mean, do you really expect the Brits to look at him and go, well, we're good, but those Americans? Of course not. So the fact of the matter is the president was speaking the truth. They want to use this as a political ploy. But the fact of the matter is I'm going to disagree with the president a little bit. I think we're down on American exceptionalism right now. I don't think it's where it used to be. I think back to Apollo 13. Here you had first of all, you had NASA in a program that one president came out and said, in the next decade, we're going to be on the moon. And they beat that. They did it faster than that. That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. Then Apollo 13 happened. Here you had guys stuck hundreds of thousands of miles from the Earth. And they're trying to get back. And they've got limited stuff up there. And what did they do? They took some of the best and brightest minds available at NASA at the time, threw them in the room with a bunch of junk that was available, and said, fix it, guys. And lo and behold, they fixed it. They brought them back. That's American exceptionalism. That's sheer brain power. Seems nowadays intelligence is looked down upon. It's more important to be Larry the Cable Guy than it is to be the rocket scientist. It's cooler to be the buffoon. A bigger problem, though, is that our perception of American exceptionalism, our idea that we are the best, has gotten in the way of us being the best. I was thinking about this, and I had heard someone say once that new ideas never come from agreement. Because if everybody's on the same page, nothing new will happen. And I agree with that. But I would extend it one place further. And that is that new ideas also never come from obstruction. Now, that's not the same as obstacles. Obstacles are where new ideas come from. When you run into an obstacle, you have to think, how do I get around it? How do I get over it? How do I get through it? How do I get under it? How do I avoid this obstacle? Obstruction is willfully getting in the way. We're going to run into obstacles when we think of new ideas. That's how they're generated. But when we have someone constantly stepping into our way, constantly saying no, constantly denying the ability to move forward, we can't have new ideas. In fact, what ends up happening is we squelch those new ideas. Why? Why would you want to keep trying if someone's going to keep throwing everything in your way, especially when they are throwing things in your way that don't matter? They're just there to get in your way. until we learn how to deal with that, until we learn not to have that obstruction, we're going to suffer in the exceptionalism department. Here's a great example of it. As I mentioned, President Kennedy said, we're going to be on the moon within 10 years, and we did it. But in the nearly 50 years since he said that, we haven't figured out how to lower our dependence on fossil fuels. We got guys 220,000 miles away onto the moon safely back home and did it multiple times. We put space shuttles up and brought them back. We have a space station running. All these things, and we can't figure out how not to use oil? Why? Well, the answer is pretty simple, I think. Money. Oil companies aren't going to put that research in. They're making too much profit. They're really going to lose profit by funding research into an alternative? I don't think so. You know what another big difference was? The Apollo program, NASA, it was funded. They put money into it. The government put money into it, into the research. These guys could do it. And we've all benefited from that research. There's not a whole lot of money being put into alternative fuels. Why? Because politicians wouldn't be making any money either. When you see all the apologies that are being made to BP because they spilled the oil, but hey, we're going to ask them to pay for it, you think those politicians might have a vested interest in the oil continuing to flow? When an entire agency of the government was corrupted such that they allowed the oil industry to do whatever they wanted. Do you think they're going to stop the corruption just because the oil company wants to keep going? They're not going to do anything to help us stop. We give subsidies to oil companies. We give them free offshore leases. That's money that could be used to find alternatives, to fund a group of really smart people to come up with a different solution and get it started. We shouldn't be in the oil business. We shouldn't be in the alternative fuel business. But we should be coming up with the breakthroughs using our American exceptionalism, our brain power that we have on tap to figure out the solutions to get out of this. So we don't have to rely on that foreign oil. So we don't have to see what happened in the Gulf happen again and again and again. We have American exceptionalism. We need to use it. New ideas do not come from everybody thinking the same, and they don't come from people standing in the way. They come from finding an obstacle, like how do we get rid of our usage, our excessive usage of fossil fuels. That's the obstacle. We should be putting our think tanks to work on how we solve that, how we get rid of that, how we get out of that problem. That's the American exceptionalism that we need to count on. That's where we need to go. We need new ideas, and we need them now. We'll be right back.